D2 football season's over in 2024. The national championship on Saturday was a rematch. Valdosta State, Ferris State. This one didn't know how it's going to go. The third time these two teams have met in the national final in a decade, which is ridiculous in of itself. But joining me tonight to talk about it, Matt Wittwicki. What's going on, man?
You know what? We had ourselves another championship game, and the Bulldogs, three times out of the last four, they took care of business in a big way, Kobe.
They absolutely did. That's top of my notes right here. Ferris State very much still that team. That was kind of the headlining piece for me. And I know I had talked a lot about the last meeting between these two squads. Valdosta got absolutely routed by Jared Bernhardt and company, and we saw the physicality of Ferris State. And I really was sold on the fact that this Valdosta State team is different, and they totally were. Brand new head coach, whole new basically roster, totally overhauled, had talent at all the right positions. Felt like they were a lot more physical at the point of attack, but it just didn't show up, and it didn't translate. And I just don't think we got Valdosta's best on Saturday. Ferris gets up to a 21-0 lead and basically didn't look back. Talk about general takeaways from this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Valdosta State is probably a better football team than they showed us.
Mm-hmm.
But Ferris had a whole lot to do with that. Ferris is the light's not too bright on them, Kobe, in these moments.
Mm.
They've been in it so many times. Frankly, they played on really big stages over the last few years, whether it's at Grand Valley, at Montana, at Pitt State. So they've had a whole lot of big games on the road. Whereas Valdosta, this was a little bit newer experience for them, and played a lot of their biggest games at home this year. And they were unbeaten. They had a fantastic season, but Ferris State, when they're clicking, and Trinidad's doing his thing, and the defense is doing their thing, and Coach Anise is dialing it up,
Mm-hmm.
man, they're tough to beat at our level, buddy.
Both Coach and nieces absolutely
Hmm.
dialed there, which that whole family affair is a really cool story, in of itself. But yeah, this Ferris State defense, I mean, that was really the sticking point for me. And Trinidad and those guys on the other side of the ball, we know exactly what kind of impact they've had on games like this. But that defense, I think they kind of forced Valdosta into a shell, so to speak, in terms of some of their play calling. It felt like at times throughout the course of their game, I was surprised at how conservative that offense from the Blazers looked. Excuse me, there. And for me, it just felt like from that perspective for Valdosta, it felt like from my perspective they needed to gamble a little bit more, especially when you have a guy under center like Edwards and you have some weapons on the outside. We saw Slippery Rock get after the DBs from Ferris State, who by all means are great playmakers, but at times are undersized and maybe can't match up with some of these bigger targets on the outside. Valdosta had a couple of them. I expected a little bit more of a gamble and a risk-taking mindset from this Valdosta State team. Did you see a little bit of the same?
Yeah, I know that they were double teaming Bullard for the deep ball,
Yep.
but boy, they missed it on the first play of the game, and honestly could
Yes.
have had a score right there. You got a chance to see how he can run past people, but after that, they were not going to let him win over the top more times than not.
Mhm.
It took Valdosta State longer to get to the mesh routes and a lot of the crossing stuff that they had some success with in the middle of the football game. I thought it took them a little bit too long to get there. And you can sometimes get a false sense of how good you can be in the run game against Ferris. They got a few good runs early, Valdosta did.
Yeah.
And then when they really needed it to be able to run the football, Valdosta or Ferris was able to stop them. And if you give the ball back to Ferris early and your defense is not getting the job done, all of a sudden you're playing chase against a squad who was just really good, and get after the quarterback. And I thought Sammy Edwards, he saw more pressure and duress than he has all year.
Absolutely.
He tried to make a few plays, Kobe, and gave up the ball a few times, and it was a tough one that way.
Yeah, he extended on the left sideline there for that fumble that ended up getting scooped up. That was just so inopportune, and especially
Yeah.
when it was such a close play and that like we thought that might go back in review. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen, and then the extra point through is going through, and it's like, okay, I guess that's just there. And it just felt a little
Yeah.
bit, that sequence was pretty wild.
You know what? For my own selfish reasons, wanting a good football game, I was kind of hoping that they're going to replay that because I thought that was
Yeah.
really close. The
No,
fact
agreed.
that they didn't replay that at all, but at the same time, to some extent, the horse was already out of the barn, and by that time, Valdosta would have just had to really do a whole lot of things right. And I thought in the first half, when they had a chance to get the ball back, kind of late in the half, and then they jumped off sides on a punt and things like that. I thought they had moments, where they could have kind of lessened the damage in that first half and maybe had a chance to go into a 2-minute offense. They kind of blew that, and then Ferris scored, and everything kind of went sideways after that.
Yeah, and I mentioned Trinidad earlier on, but this offense with him, I think the big piece, you touched on it, was that Edwards was really struggling to get into rhythm by no fault of his own early on. And when you can't get a quarterback to start feeling confidence on a stage like that they haven't really played on before, unlike, Ferris, who's been there so often, Trinidad was making things happen himself. I mean, you look at that batted pass that he picks up and turns into a first down, or big time fourth down conversions, or scoring with his legs or with his feet. They had the nice little bit of trickery. They called it Skittles. I saw on Twitter was the play call. He kind of has the option to the left side, and the running back sneaks out down the left sideline, just a little pitch and catch over the top. And it felt like Lady Luck, certainly at some of these points, just on Ferris' side. Also, it's just great play calling and great scheme. But talk about his performance and how I believe he's really cemented himself as one of the best in the country. I think the Harlan Hill voting certainly reflected that. Thought going into that, maybe he wouldn't get as much credit as he deserved because of maybe the statistics standpoint, or some of these other people have had better individual performances. But I'm glad that the winning factor is appearingly still part of that award.
Agreed. He got recognized, I thought, properly in that, considering the way he really came on in the second half and late. You watch the play that you mentioned where he's going ahead running to the left side. Looks like, you got to come downhill, the defense does, to stop him in the run game. And then he just stops and pops.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know, how do you defend that? I mean, with the danger he is as a runner. And, I mean, you saw that in the very first play of the game. Trinidad went left. The cornerback came up, had a shot at him. Trinidad makes him whiff, and all of a sudden now we're off to the races. And the way that the weapon that he can be like that, 40 yards later, first play of the game, and everybody's just looking around going, wow, this is already happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of weapon he really is. And I think that he is really a difference maker in what they can do offensively this season compared to even a season ago.
Yeah. No, he's made great strides, and him and I talked about that, when he came on the show. And for Ferris, third national championship in 4 years, and another great story of Connor Neer coming back after winning 2, goes to Oklahoma, comes back, picks up right where he left off, and wins another natty, got another trophy. And this Ferris team, led by Coach Anise there, they have cemented themselves. He threw around that term dynasty, and I think after you do it 3 times in 4 years, I think you deserve to throw that term around. Talk about the future of this squad with him and some other big-time playmakers coming back. Of course, Ferris had some great players come out of the portal. They've done a good job high school recruiting, too. I don't want to discredit them there.
You know what? Being an older fellow, Kobe, I have trouble with the word dynasty sometimes, but I normally think of that as a little bit longer time frame. But you know what? Here's my take on this. Ferris State reasserted themselves as the elite program in Division II. After last year, I didn't think they were quite as good a squad. I thought Grand Valley, frankly, was a better squad in their own conference than they were. And I think they showed that. But at the same time, we weren't sure coming into these playoffs, Kobe, if Ferris State was truly the best team, even in SR3.
Agreed.
And then with the way that they took care of business against Harding, it kind of put the rest of the D2 landscape on notice. We're back, and we're back in this kind of way. And Trinidad, I thought, really led that charge throughout this postseason in really impressive and memorable fashion.
He absolutely did, and his difference was felt throughout the course of that. And, that Harding game was, to your point, literally nothing that we would have expected. Also coming off of the heels of the performance they had at Pittsburgh State. And so there are these games where it just made absolutely zero sense. That's part of the awesome piece of college football.